Welcome to In the Weeds. Howdy.
Hello.
Welcome.
Welcome, YouTube. We are goons. If you
Yeah.
expected anything other than that.
You're not going to get it because you're going
sorry.
to get goons. Anyways, we are breaking down and trying to come up with sounds that are relatively close and similar to The Falling Sky by Greta Van Fleet.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to go for drum sounds and guitar sounds in this one and try to match both pretty close and get on that same playing field in general that they're in. What are you feeling drum-wise?
Yeah, I think this one's pretty attainable.
Mhm.
Pretty rocky.
Yep.
What the crap?
Great start.
Anyways, yeah, it feels pretty attainable. It's pretty rocky.
Yeah.
This song is one you suggested, so you're
Mhm.
pretty familiar with this. Coming into this with pretty fresh ears, and it sounds pretty cool. It's actually like there's not a lot on the grid. Was
Yeah.
the first thing I recognized.
It's loose.
It's pretty. I said sloppy, but that usually is a negative connotation. But it I don't know. It's rock and roll.
Yeah, it's rock and roll.
It's
So
insane.
their whole thing is like, we're doing the old thing. We're doing the Led Zeppelin thing. Even you hear that in the vocals. And I love that. You know, you get mixed opinions whenever you do a project like that. You get the people that are like, well, now you're just copying this. And then you get the people that are like, wow, old school rock and roll again. Thank you for bringing that back.
Yeah.
I tend to lean more on that side. And I've really enjoyed watching their rise up with the sounds that they do, because you listen to other like big rock bands right now who are like, they're playing arenas or they're opening in arena shows, and sometimes they're playing their own arena shows, and it usually doesn't sound this rock and roll authentic. Just like it's going through an awesome preamp, and that's what it is, and it's mixed and it's done. You're hearing a lot of like heavy sampling in a lot of the rock that's out right now and stuff like that. And this is just like, no, screw all that. We're just going to get great sounding sounds and just play it.
Yeah. It reminds me, I would always make fun of Ringo. People would be like, Ringo's my favorite drummer. I'm like, why? He plays out of time all the time.
Yeah.
And then I tried to play Ringo, and you just can't replicate it as well, because he's perfectly in between straight and swung. And so I think this is going to be hunting a little bit of that.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a innate grunge slop to the rhythm that makes the genre. And it's pretty
for
sweet.
sure. Yeah, and from a guitar perspective, it's super. To me, it sounds like a. I'm not 100% sure if it's a single coil or humbucker yet, but it's that old school like Vox AC30 or Marshall stack sound that's like, it's broken up, it's beyond the edge of breakup, and it's like definitely overdriven, but it's not ridiculously overdriven. And it's just kind of nailing into that sound. Like it's a Strat sound. It's a rock and roll Strat sound, which is really easy to replicate. I think his playing style is pretty easy to replicate, but he's also like a really good player. It's just that his riffs are very like, they're straightforward and they are what they are, but he allows them to get a little ornery. Like you can hear moments in the recording where it's like he's playing a chord that would be the E, A, and D string, but the G string is snuck in there, and they just leave it, because that's how it would be. And I love doing that, and I think that is what would make this song like a hard song to replicate. Yeah. So I'm fun. I'm excited to give it a shot. That makes more sense.
I know, but
when
there's
you
a
wouldn't
goose
lose
in there somehow.
Yeah, there was a goose. I don't remember. Anyways, Greta Van Fleet.
We'll keep you updated.
Falling Sky. Let's get some drums.
What's up, YouTube? We got some rock today. We got some rock drums. I'm not going to spend too much time, because at the end of the day, this is a beat that everyone learns kind of early on. There's a couple things that make it interesting and make it unique that I'll get into, but for the most part, it's rock and roll. It's the kick on 1 and 3 and the snare on 2 and 4. When I was getting this part ready, there were 3 things that I was trying to really focus on. One, when you're playing rock music, you got to hit hard. You got to hit with conviction and authority, and that'll really take you places and communicate. This song has a lot of you can just feel the energy kind of coming through. And when recording this kind of music, you have to hit with conviction, because the end user, the end listener, is going to hear those differences and those subtleties. So number one, you got to hit hard. The second thing that I was focusing on is with rock and roll, sometimes if you're not listening intently, it can just seem like they're doing the same old, same old. And in order to get some different textures, some different interests, outside of fills, it's hard to communicate different sections of music. You can do that by what you do with your right hand, whether you're going on the ride, whether the hi-hat's closed, whether the hi-hat's open, a couple things like that. And in this particular song, the drummer differentiates the sections with a closed hi-hat and an open hi-hat. I'll give you a chance. Here's what it sounds like with the closed hi-hat. And here's what it sounds like with the open hi-hat. So, basically the same beat, but one has way more energy to it, one a little bit more life to it. So when playing, again, quote unquote simpler beats such as rock, not a ton of technicality happening, but there is a lot of musicality that needs to be infused, and doing subtle things like that can add to a performance, add to a recording, make it dynamic instead of just playing the same old thing the whole way through. With the conviction and some of those subtleties, we talked a lot in the opening about sloppiness or looseness. What we are referring to is that every hit is not quantized. It's not locked into a metronomic grid the whole way through. Some things shift here and there, and I briefly talked about Ringo. They play in rock and roll. That's how it gets its name, rock and roll. There's this shift of rock solid duple and rolling triplets. So I have two things up on the screen right now to kind of show you what I mean by duple versus triple. The duple meter is going to sound like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Those are straight eighth notes. Okay, where some of the funkiness comes in, some of the, we call it swing, but you get swung eighth notes, which are based on triplets. You count them like this: 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. Instead of grabbing that middle triplet, or the middle of the 3 notes, 1 triplet, you're going to just catch the last 2. 1, let 2, let 3, let 4, let. Basically omitting that. And where you get 2 notes: 1, let 2, let 3, let 4. That creates a swung pattern. That's a lot, but at the end of the day, what a lot of rock and roll music does is plays somewhere in the middle of those two things. It's not 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and it's not 1, let 2, let 3, let 4, let. It's somewhere in between. And that's really hard to describe. It's a lot more something you feel and something you just got to listen to a lot of. In this particular song, it's pretty subtle. The hits and some of the accents is where you feel a little bit more, where everything's not like really crisp and really sharp. It's just kind of floating. So yeah, a lot of cool parts. Once again, I did the prototypical Jake move of going, it's rock, it'll be fine. And then when you dig into the part, you find, oh wow, this is actually more complex, or even if it's not more complex, it takes a lot more conviction than I think it's going to. It takes a lot more, just grit and especially in rock, a lot more grit to make it sound and translate the way it does on the album. There's a lot of things you can do in post. the energy and bringing that sort of energy and emotion to the performance, you can't add that back in post. So, especially from the drums, capturing that energy was what I was trying to do in this. So, we'll see later on if I do it. Let's check out some guitars.
Alrighty, guys. So today we are going to be breaking down "The Falling Sky" by Greta Van Fleet. "The Falling Sky" is one of those, like, if you're a fan of riffs, it's a riff guy's song. Whether you're a musician or you're not a musician at all, it's just one of those songs like that feels like it should be in Guitar Hero, or something like that. It's huge, it's massive, it's got this arena sound. Greta Van Fleet in general is just killing it right now. But yeah, this song in particular is just huge, and I'm gonna give you a little bit of the background of why from a guitar perspective. We'll start with some boring, but I'll make it not boring, music theory type stuff, and then we'll move into talking about like the actual tones that they dialed in to get what they got. So to talk about it from a music theory perspective and to really dumb it down in a way that like somebody who doesn't really care about music theory nor knows anything about it nor wants to care about it can understand and grasp easily. This song is in D minor, and it pretty much, that main riffs around the D minor scale. And D minor, along with its buddies, as far as keys to play a song in goes, A minor and E minor, are like the three most popular, they're like the three-headed horsemen of keys to play hard rock songs in. There's a reason for this. So they have the root note, right? The one. It's the minor six, but it's the one. It's the note that we come back to in a minor song. The very first note is an open note, which means when I say open, I'm not fretting anything with this hand. See this hand up here? I'm playing a D, but I'm not putting my hands on any frets. The reason this is great for riff songs and really just hard rock songs in general is because you can do a lot of playing around with things that always are coming back to the open note. No idea what I'm talking about. I'm going to give you a couple examples, but I'm going to make them short so that I don't get copyright striked. You may have heard this one before. And then, so, see how often my hands weren't touching the fretboard? Right? Another one that'll be very familiar to you if you grew up in the, like, again, I'm bringing up Guitar Hero a bunch, man. Wow, I don't know why. If you grew up in that era, this one will be familiar to you. Right? A lot of me coming off the fretboard. Here's one that I'll play an even shorter one because it's like copy strike hell. And that's where I'm going to cut that one. See how much my hands were off the fretboard. It just allows for this flexibility when you write in a key where you can do, where the one is an open note, that you can always kind of come back to it, right? Because if I'm playing something like this, it's a lot easier and just more flexible and more fun, and I can move around and do more things, as opposed to if I'm in, let's go one half step higher than that. So that's like in a closed position. I'm going to go one half step higher. And you can still do it, but you can't move around quite as much. Whereas when you play in these keys with an open one, you can do these kind of exotic, like, you get the idea. Like those kind of riffs where you're just traveling around and you're always coming back to home base. Tons of riffs are written like that. So Greta Van Fleet is in D minor, or sorry, The Falling Sky is in D minor, and it works in the D minor scale basically to a T. So, you know, you got your D minor scale, and the, you know, the riff. It's really just playing various notes in the D minor scale in a fun and exciting way. I love it. It's freaking awesome. Another tiny little snippet that I'll throw in. There's this part in the pre-chorus that goes. And I really like that. They use a technique there called double stops. And what double stops are is like instead of playing a whole chord, you just play two notes that harmonize with each other. So think of a whole chord as like something that we're all really familiar with, right? Like when you hear the sound of it, you're like, cool, that's a chord, and you just think of it as one thing. When you play a double stop, it kind of highlights these two characters in a story, almost as if it's two singers harmonizing with each other at the same time, and you can kind of hear both of them distinctly, right? So they could have very easily actually played that pre-chorus riff with chords. They could have done it something like this. Nice big full chords like that, play some power chords, whatever. They could have done something that's very familiar to our ear as like, oh yeah, they're playing chords, they're building up. But instead, they kind of chose to use this double stop thing, where you can hear those two characters. And I really like that. I think it's a cool choice. It's a cool decision. Talk about tone for 2 seconds. For the tone of this song, you're probably thinking as you hear me play, you're like, dude, where's the overdrive? Where's the distortion? This is a freaking rock song. The answer to that question is less is more. And this is how they approach the guitar tones in this song too. It sounds like this massive, thick, huge wall of guitar. But to accomplish that, it's really less about having a ton of distortion and more about energy of the way they're hitting the notes. Right? And the attack. And the amp, essentially what I've dialed in is I've got a Vox AC15 back there that's mic'd up. I have the gain on the amp, the like kind of the preamp gain, if you will, a little past 50%. And I have a clean boost over here and a tiny bit of compression. I have my 1176 at about a quarter of the on the input, and I have my Duke of Tone clean boost here, not even halfway on the drive, about a little over a quarter on the clean boost channel. So, you know, really not doing a whole lot because that's what they did in this song. And when you play and really bear into the chords and play all of the notes with intention, it sounds massive. I mean, it sounds absolutely massive. And yeah, again, it's one of those things in a recording scenario, less is more. So yeah, that's basically what I've got for Greta Van Fleet, The Falling Sky. Let's get to the playthrough.